Okay. Okay. So we always hear arguments against Islam. We always hear the argument that the Prophet Muhammad cannot be a prophet. Or atheists or Christians always say Prophet Muhammad can't be a prophet, or Prophet Muhammad was a immoral man because he had many wives. The Prophet Muhammad, I think, he had 12 wives or something like that. But I just want to point out the inconsistency of both atheists and Christians when they criticize the Prophet Muhammad for practicing polygamy. Polygamy is marrying more than one woman. Now, of course, the atheists can't say there's anything immoral about the Quran or the Bible or anything like that, or Islam or anything like that, or Christianity, because the atheist has no objective standard of morality. The atheist can't justify morality. Thus, the atheist can't say anything is right or wrong objectively, and they just have one subjective morality over another subjective morality. So, the atheist has no objective morality, and the atheist can't justify morality. So the atheist can't say there's anything right or wrong objectively. So the atheist is very inconsistent in criticizing the morals of the Prophet Muhammad or the Bible or the Quran or anything like that. So the atheist can't say there's anything wrong with the Bible or the Quran. So getting to Christians, well, Christians are also inconsistent because the Christian's biggest weakness is not Paul. The Christian's biggest weakness is the Old Testament because it refutes a lot of their claims, anyways. Because if we read 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 8, this verse clearly allows polygamy because notice what God says to David. Of course, 2 Samuel chapter 12 is about prophet or King David getting Saul's possessions. 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 8 says, "I gave you your master's houses and your master's wives into your keeping." Now notice what God says. He says, "I gave you your master's house and I gave you your master's wives." So pay attention to what it says. It says your master's wives. So God would not have done this if he discouraged polygamy. So the God of the Bible, which is also the God of the New Testament, and allows polygamy because he gave Saul's wives to David. He says, "Your master's wives." So the God of the Bible approved polygamy. He approved having more than one wife. He approved a man having more than one wife and having multiple wives because he gave Saul's wives to David. He wouldn't have allowed that, or he wouldn't have done that if he didn't approve of polygamy. It's like somebody eating, I don't know, this is like somebody eating pork. Why would someone eat pork if they don't think pork is allowed in their belief system? So like God allowed polygamy because God allowed polygamy into his belief system, which is his Old Testament religion, whether it's Judaism or whatever. So God allowed Yahweh Elohim or Elohim Yahweh, whatever God's name is in the Old Testament, since God has many names in the Old Testament. He gave Saul's, whatever God's name is, he gave Saul's wives to King David. So 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 8 tells us that God allowed polygamy, and the God of the Bible, had no problem with giving Saul's wives to David. That means that the God of the Bible approved a man marrying several wives, and approved of wives being exchanged from one husband to another husband. So God allowed wife swapping and polygamy, marrying more than one woman. So the whole point of this video is Christians are horribly inconsistent when they criticize the Prophet Muhammad's polygamy, or the Prophet Muhammad marrying many wives, because David and Solomon also married many wives, and God had no problem with it. God only had a problem when Solomon's wives led him into paganism or polytheism, because it says in 2 Kings that 1 Kings or 2 Kings that Solomon's wives led his heart astray. So that means Solomon's wives made him a pagan or a polytheist, and God hates polytheism. According to the Bible, God hates paganism and polytheism. So God had no problem with Solomon marrying 700 wives, etc. God had a problem with his wives leading him into paganism, and God had no problem with him marrying several wives. So the point is, my point is like Prophet David, who, according to both the Old Testament and New Testament, is a man after God's heart, practiced polygamy, and God gave Saul's wives to King David. So that means God approved of polygamy and a man marrying multiple wives. So I just wanted to point out the inconsistency of Christians when they keep criticizing the Prophet Muhammad. Read your Bible, read the Old Testament. The Old Testament, especially 2 Samuel chapter 12 verse 8, allows polygamy, allows a man to marry, or it's God approved polygamy. God approved a man marrying multiple wives according to the Old Testament theology. So Christians cannot say without being inconsistent that the Prophet Muhammad was wrong for practicing polygamy when their own Bible allows polygamy. Being the case of Solomon, being the case of David and Solomon. Stay tuned. More videos coming up ahead.